If you're fishing a lot of grass this summer, what type slip sinkers seem to work best? Wow! That's a beauty. Good morning, guys and girls. July 14th. That's right, July 14th. Looking at the book of James. The book of James. The book of James. I'll have to tell that story sometime. When Chris and I went to a black church in South Carolina. We were the only, well, I was the only white person in there. Chris, a half Indian, so I was the only white person in there. And the preacher got up there to preach, and he said, today we will be preaching from the book of James. And about that time, the piano player went, dong, 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 or the organ player. And he looked over at him, and he said, today we will be speaking from the book of James. And he goes, dong, 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 dong. And some girl got up in the choir and went, wow, 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 wow. And he turned around and looked at her, the preacher. He's got a suit on. He looks good, man. He looks good. Looks over at that organ player. I said, today we will be looking at the book of James. And the piano player goes, dong, 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 dong. And the girl stood up, and another girl stood up, and he goes, da, 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 da. And I swear, they all got up and sang songs praising God for another 30 minutes. 1:30 in the afternoon before we got out of that church. I loved that church service. James 4:10 says, humble yourself in the Lord's presence. Humble yourself in the Lord's presence, and he will honor you. Oh, that's a big deal. When you get honor from God, when you get reward from God, when you get favor from God, that is a big deal. That is life-changing. That is earth-shattering. That is just the difference between life and death, between healing and sickness, between getting a promotion and not getting it. On and on and on and on. When God honors you, it's amazing what happens. It's amazing what happens in your life. Humble yourself in the Lord's presence, and he will honor you. That's exactly right. Just about every fisherman, listen to this, just about every fisherman has an ego. Yeah, that's right, an ego. And we really enjoy it when someone strokes that ego. If no one does, if nobody strokes our ego, we'll do it ourselves. We do this particularly if we're around someone who believes that we think he has more than we do, or he might be better than we are. We're around somebody we might think might be a better fisherman. We're going to brag a little bit. We have somebody that's got a beautiful piece of property. We might brag a little bit about ours. Somebody that makes more money than we do. We might brag about how much money we make. We might stroke our ego if no one strokes it for us. Of course, we all really want to be something special, and we want to be something great. And we should want that. That's exactly what we should want. We should want that for our life. We want to be special. We want to be something great. But God tells us simply to be humble in his presence. When are we in the presence of God? Duh, we're in the presence of God 24/7. Everything we do, everything we say, everything we think is in the presence of an almighty, holy God. That's why he knows our heart. What we say, what we think, other people, we might be able to fool them, but God knows our heart. You see, we can fool the world, but we can't fool God. We can fool the world, but we can't fool God. Why? Because he already knows. And he also knows how pride can hurt us. That's why God wants you to be humble in his presence. He knows how pride can hurt us. He knows what a trap it is. He knows what it'll cost us and what mistakes it will cost us to make. He knows all, and he sure enough knows how to reward the humble. And that's a promise. He says he'll do that right here in James 4:10. He says, humble yourself in the Lord's presence, and he will honor you. Honor is just another great biblical word for reward. He will reward you. He will give you a touch of his favor. And a touch of God's favor can change your life. Not only for a week or a year or the rest of your life, but a touch of God's favor change your life for all eternity. Here's our tip for today. Tungsten, that's right. Tungsten slip sinkers penetrate grass better than lead weights do. So if you're fishing in the grass, you're fishing some soft plastics. I like fishing little craws, particularly in the summertime. Fish are eating those craws when they get down in the grass. Crawfish eat grass is what they eat. So they're down in there eating, and bass are in there looking for them. And tungsten slip sinkers, because they're smaller for the size of slip sinker they are. You can take a half-ounce slip sinker, and tungsten, and it's like half the size. So it'll penetrate down in the grass better and get down in there. And now, I found that for the most part, if you're penetrating heavy grass, the bass don't even care too much about how big that doggone sinker is. You know, it doesn't make that much difference when you're fishing in that situation. A lot of other times it makes a big difference. But a lot of times you can use an ounce and a half slip sinker, and it's like, and you're using a little 2 or 3 or 4 inch crawl on the end of it. And that slip sinker can seem like it's just overpowering it, but the bass will bite it anyway. And that's the only thing that's really important. Guys and girls, go out there and have you a great one today. And remember, I sure do love you.